Hey everyone, I'm Tammy Salenberger, the author of The One Inside 30 Days to Your Authentic Self. This podcast is for anyone curious about who they are, the different parts of themselves, and for those who want to connect with their true self. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. On today's episode, I chat with Jenna Riemersma about her chapter in the upcoming book, Altogether Us. We talk about an IFS shorthand, notice, know, and need, moving towards our own parts, moving towards our parts in relationships with other people, as therapists and helping professionals, as friends, parents, and partners. We talk about moving towards before we turn towards, especially in difficult relationships and in difficult communities. You can pre-order the book, the ebook, on Amazon. You can also get my book on Amazon, The One Inside 30 Days to Your Authentic Self. I was just on a podcast recently, and the podcast host said that my book was like IFS for Dummies, which I loved. And so now I think I'm going to call it IFS for Dummies. So you can get that book wherever you buy books. One of the things I love about this episode is it's just really practical. And so sometimes we have a hard time connecting with parts, and we certainly sometimes don't have an hour to go inside, shut our eyes. And so notice, know, and need, and moving towards are super helpful, practical tools and guides. And I think this episode is going to be really helpful. Enjoy. So Jenna, I am so excited to be with you today and get another chance just to hang out with you.
Girl, I always love it when we get to hang out together.
I love how our parts are a little bit like, let's have work things. And that way we can just keep seeing each other for like work. Let's just keep making like work event things happen. And so that way we get to hang out.
That's right. I love it.
So how about we just kind of orient everyone to where you are? I know you've sort of said this before, but people that maybe are just listening to you for the first time, just let everybody know where you are in the world and what you would see if you looked out your nearest window.
Well, my body is in Atlanta. However, earlier this month, I had the incredible privilege of being with Dick Shorts on the Molokai retreat in Hawaii. And so I think a part of my heart is still in Hawaii. So I'm in two places.
And what is that part doing right now? Let's just invite everyone to do whatever that part is doing. What is that part doing in Hawaii right now?
Hula, baby, let's go.
And Jenna is huluing for those who can't see her. No, nobody can, only I can. She is huluing. So.
Okay. So fun fact, I went to high school in Hawaii and I actually learned how to hula in PE. It was an elective for PE. So I actually know traditional Hawaiian hula.
Is there first of all, I didn't know that about you. That's amazing that you went to high school in Hawaii. Is there you're not just like shifting your hips around? Like how do you hula technically?
Oh, well, have you ever hula hooped?
Yes. I mean,
Yes.
I have attempted to hula hoop, but failed every time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, me too. So that's about how good my hula skills are. So there you go.
Hula hooping looks easy, but it is not easy.
Mm-hmm. Just saying.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I love it. And so you were with Dick in Hawaii, and did Dick do any I want to say hula hooping now because I can't find the word. Did Dick do any dancing?
Any hula?
Hula dancing.
Not that I'm aware of. He may have done hula when he went back to his room at the end of the day. It's possible there was some stealth hula happening with Dick, but I was not personally a witness to such an event.
Okay, we need to find out. I need a picture of Dick hula dancing.
I think with the skirt and everything, we need to. Yeah, it's a thing.
I think that happened. I hope he did that for himself. I would love that for him. I would love that for him. What I love for you is that you are coming on to talk again with us and with me about moving towards, and we did an episode, I don't know, a couple of years ago about moving towards, which was fantastic. But you have this amazing, huge, crazy book coming out, which I'm super excited about, called Altogether Us. And you have a chapter. Is your chapter called Moving Towards, or what is your chapter called?
We're still finishing the chapter titles, but Move Toward is sort of the name of this shorthand approach that I've developed. And so, yeah, Move Toward, which kind of captures the essence of IFS. And I think why I love IFS so much is because most of us spend most of our time moving against the parts of ourselves and other people that we don't like. And IFS teaches us to move toward those parts with curiosity and compassion, which is actually turns out the most effective way to help them heal. So to me, Move Toward captures the spirit and the heart of the beauty of the IFS model.
I love it. And what you've shared with me too is that moving toward is also a really quick kind of check-in for kind of like how your system's doing, or sort of how something, or either how someone else or a situation. I feel like it's been like a kind of a quick kind of a shorthand, like you said, of like, okay, what is the energy of this? Or like, can I feel my body kind of moving against or moving away from either this person or this thing? And so I love that too, for just kind of quick, like, how do I notice what's happening in my system in this moment? Because I can't like go inside, close my eyes. And I want to be able to just know and tell what's happening.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's really the goal of having a little quick shorthand tool that captures the spirit of the IFS model, is because we don't always have the time to kind of close our eyes and spend an hour working with our parts. And we don't always have the skills to do that either. Not everyone has the privilege of getting into an IFS training or getting into an IFS therapist, but a lot of people are really excited about the model and want to be able to use it. And this shorthand tool is really designed to do two things. Number one, to address access. We have a lot of people who want access to the IFS model and can't really get it. And then also to address applicability. A lot of people may have some idea of what the model is, but don't exactly know how to apply it in real time. And so what I've done is try to just condense the spirit of the model into 3 words, which are notice, know, and need. And those 3 words are pretty easy to remember. We can use them anytime. You don't have to have been through an IFS training or be an IFS therapist or have an IFS therapist to be able to remember those 3 words to use when you need it the most. So when I'm stressed out and have had a hard day and get home and want to eat the whole box of cookies, rather than letting the eat the cookies part take me over and cause me to eat all the cookies, I can just take one moment and I can notice where that part is showing up, maybe showing up in some repetitive thoughts about eating the cookies, maybe in my body and my hands, wanting to go to the pantry and open it. I can notice it with compassion, and then I can ask that part, what do you want me to know about you? Why you showed up right now? And I might learn that that part is trying to help me get some comfort or some relief after a really long and stressful day. So I might begin to develop some understanding of why it's taking me over. And then I might just ask that part, well, what do you need from me right now to feel a little more comforted, a little less activated? And that part might say, I really need you to stop scheduling your days back to back to back. I need you to take a lunch break. And I can really listen to that and understand it so that that part doesn't have to take me over at the end of the day when I haven't had a break, to try to give me some care and some nurture. And that takes, maybe 30 seconds. It takes less time than it would for me to eat the whole box of cookies. But it does several things. First of all, it creates a self to part relationship. I can unblend from this part. So, step one, notice, is an unblending step. I stay with noticing the part until I can notice it compassionately.
And notice
Right?
it's separate from me, it sounds like. And then I'm also
Yes,
noticing it as it's separate.
exactly. This is not who I am. This is a part of me, a good part of me that's gotten stuck maybe in an unhelpful role. And I can just notice that with compassion. So that's unblending. Know, when I ask the part, what do you want me to know about you? That's witnessing. So we're really building a relationship with the part. What do you want me to know about you? That's getting to know this part. And then what do you need from me right now to feel a little less activated? What that is it is equipping or resourcing. It's really identifying the actual need of the part, which in this case is not cookies. It's relief, it's a break, it's balance, is the actual need of the part. And when I can ask these three questions, notice, know, and need, I can learn what the actual need of the part is so I can meet that need from my core self energy more effectively, rather than just the part taking me completely over and binging on all the cookies, which isn't actually the need. The need is balance and rest. So it's really a beautiful way to unblend, to witness, and to equip our parts and to help really build and develop these self to part relationships.
So I think what typically happens is that we notice, well, you might not notice, but sort of like, well, you notice the need for cookies, right? I need the cookies. And then I might
Mhm.
notice a part then that's angry that I need the cookies. And sort
Mhm.
of sort of that's what we kind of notice. We notice the like, I want to eat all the Oreos, and I feel the like, don't do it, don't do it. I'm gonna do it, don't do it. And sort of we notice that. What do you suggest for people that are like, that's the hardest thing? Unblending is the hardest thing. Noticing what's happening, taking a beat, noticing that those two parts or that one part is separate from myself. Like, how do you, what kind of, because I feel like if we could teach this, right, to all of our
Mhm.
clients and even ourselves,
Mhm.
how do we slow down enough to kind of notice in order to separate and unblend?
Yeah, it's a great question because typically what happens is we have parts that get triggered, like you described, and they start moving against each other. So the part that wants to eat the cookies is trying to take over, and the part that's hacked off about that and is mad at the cookie eater starts to try to move against the cookie eater. And when that happens in our internal system, or interestingly enough, in our external systems, when we start to move against the people that we don't agree with, or move against the groups that we don't agree with, they escalate and we escalate, and the conflict increases rather than decreases until one pushes the other one over, and then we get flooded with shame or hurt or pain. Move against is actually making our problems worse inside of us and outside of us. And you don't have to look very far from the news headlines to see that that is true, or from our own inner battles to know intuitively move against is making our suffering worse. And to be able to move toward, it has to be something simple, and it has to be something that we can remember and do in the moment. That's why I felt like it was important to condense this into something that was easily accessible. Because when we're blended, the hardest thing in the world to do is just notice, hey, this part just took me over. I'm completely flooded with this part. All I want to do is eat the cookies or yell or disappear, whatever it might be. And so this just helps us without having to know all the complicated steps of the IFS model. Like, all I can do is just remember I need to notice until I can notice open heartedly. Now, there's a lot of things that happen. It sounds simple, but it's not easy. And so, in my chapter, which is sort of chapter 2 of this new book, Altogether Us, I've got a troubleshooting guide for all the things that can go wrong when we try to notice with compassion. So, if we're flooded with a part, I've got a troubleshooting guide for that. If we have parts that don't like the part we're trying to notice, I've got a troubleshooting guide for that. Lots of different ways that we may get stuck. I've got just some little go-to suggestions to make that kind of work seamlessly. So my hope is to make it really accessible.
I love it. I love that. Yeah, and I think the thing too is I think we can notice even after we're, well, this is going to sound really stupid now that I'm saying it out loud, but like I'm thinking of the other day, I noticed that a part had completely taken me over. And so it was like the part had already taken me over. I was already gone. I was already disappeared. I was already like dissociative. I'm like, I'm not even here anymore. And it wasn't until then that I was like, I was doing something super fun with my son. And I was like, wait a minute, I should be smiling and laughing and having a good time. And I feel nothing. And that's when I noticed it. But I mean, I probably have been feeling that way for an hour before I noticed it. So I wonder if people also maybe just need to have permission to like, you might not catch it. Like you might have already eaten all the Oreos and be sitting there in shame and blame and then looking for something else to eat. Like, so you might not catch it, but when you do notice it, like you could also notice it. Like I noticed it in the car when it was already super there. And then I had to really like, okay, I noticed it. And then I had to really, okay, what do you need to know? Like, what do I need to know? Like, and then really have a good conversation with it before it would soften. And it did soften, but I definitely had to have a conversation with it before it would soften.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, because in the moment, we're used to parts of us taking us over and doing whatever the thing is that they want to do. And so even after the fact, we can still build a self-to-part relationship, and we can still have self-led compassion for the part that was trying to help us or dealing with the feeling that it was dealing with when it took us over. Just because we're discovering that a little bit after it was triggered doesn't mean that notice, know, and need can't still be really beautiful with the part. And it's not only helpful for working with our own internal experience when we're in that internal battle. We want to yell, or we want to run away, or eat all the cookies, or drink all the alcohol, or buy all the shoes, or whatever it is that we want to do. But it's also really helpful when people are coming to us when we're in the helper position. So whether we're a parent and we have a child who's had a hard day at school, or maybe we're a helping professional and we have a client coming to us and we've heard about this IFS thing, but we're not entirely sure. We couldn't get into a level 1 training, been on the wait list for 10 years, whatever it is. Or maybe you're just, hanging out with the girlfriends and your friend says, hey, I've got this tough situation. I just don't know what to do. I'm just feeling so much anxiety. So notice in those situations, what we typically do is move against. So our kid comes home and says, I've just had such a hard day at school and I hate all those kids. They're awful. And we might say something like, well, now, honey, now those kids didn't mean to da 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 da. And maybe we need to just get you a snack. And we try to move against the pain because it's really uncomfortable. Or our friend says, I am so anxious. Oh my gosh, I just am getting these panic attacks. I don't even know what to do. And we might try to move against that, make it stop with really well-intentioned, I've heard that breathing deeply can help that. Or I think if you take zinc, that's supposed to really help with anxiety. So I think you should get some zinc. Or I heard this podcast. I think you should go listen to it. So we have this tendency to want to move against what's happening because it's uncomfortable, it's creating pain. And that makes sense, but typically that does not create a sense of connection. It creates a sense of disconnection. And the part of the other person that's in pain doesn't necessarily feel very understood or valued. So if our friend, or if our child, let's say parenting, our child came home, said, I just hate it. I hate school. I hate those kids. They're so stupid. Nobody would play with me today. And I just hate it. And I'm not going back. If we did notice, know, and need, we could just say, wow, sounds like it was really hard today. What are you noticing when you say that? I hate school. I'm just mad. I hate it. I just want to hit something. Yeah, that makes sense. Can you go ahead and hit this pillow? Definitely. I get why you'd want to hit that. And can you ask that hitting what it wants you to know? Well, it just wants to hurt them the same way they hurt me. It really hurt today that nobody would play with me and everybody else played kickball and I was just standing in the corner by myself. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, what do you think that hitting part, that angry part of you needs right now from you or from us, from me, to feel just a little bit more comforted, a little less activated? I don't know, maybe a hug. Maybe could we make some mac and cheese? Okay, let's do that. So just notice how different that feels as a mom or as a friend or as a helper. Yeah, where do you notice that? And what do you think that thing wants you to know? And what do you think it needs from you? And notice what that does. It takes us out of that impossible role of fixing whatever the problem is. We can't do that. We don't have the power to fix. And it creates a real safety in that relationship. The attachment is so profound because we're not judging, we're not evaluating, we're not fixing, we're not suggesting, we're not giving advice. We're just helping the person to welcome their own experience and come into relationship with it and really listen to their own parts. Um, so it's really beautiful and a really powerful way that we can use this model, the power of IFS, when others are coming to us and needing some support.
I love that. I'm also thinking, so two things I'm thinking. One is, um, we would really have to notice, know, and need from our fix it parts, right? The parts that want to fix it, the parts like not even realizing that the reason why we're trying to fix or help, which I'm putting in quotes, is because we're uncomfortable. I'm out with my girlfriends and you're complaining about whatever. I feel uncomfortable. And so I need to notice the part of me and move towards the part of me that's like, I'm uncomfortable. I've had a hard week. I can't listen to anybody else's problems. That sounds so harsh,
Mhm.
but well, I can't listen. So I'm going to be like, take zinc and break up with your boyfriend because I want to go and just have a good night. And so really noticing that that's actually fixing a part of me. It's not just fixing
Mhm.
them, but it's also trying to fix that part of me that's so uncomfortable because
Yeah.
it's almost, I'm moving against them, but I'm also moving against the part of me that's like, this is
Mhm.
uncomfortable. I've had a hard week. I don't want to talk about, work or, I don't want to talk about people's hard times or whatever that is. Yeah. So noticing that, right. It's kind of moving it against the part of me, by being like, that's just, is it kind of the mood I want to set tonight? It's a part of me that's like, gosh, I sound like such a jerk saying all of that, but okay.
No, it makes total sense because this is exactly what all of our burdened protectors do. They move against our exiles. Our managers move against the exiles proactively. They try to keep the exiles locked in the basement. Our firefighter parts that are reactive, they try to move against our exiles reactively and push the exiles back down so we don't have to feel what they're feeling. Sometimes they move against each other, managers and firefighters moving against each other. We call that in IFS a polarization. I want to be sober. I want to keep drinking. Those two are going to, polarize against each other. Or they move against people in the outside world, people's parts that they don't like. And in all of those cases, it winds up making our suffering worse, ours and the person that we're interacting with. And what a difference to move toward. Yeah.
So maybe that's exactly what it is notice when your kid or your friend or your partner, your husband, your boyfriend, whatever, or girlfriend, I don't know why I'm doing genders here. So, that like there is a move against energy in me before I go to fix it, right? Here's my son
Mhm.
who's saying, after we leave the play date, let me tell you all the things that I didn't like about that. And as soon as he
Mhm.
begins, we gets in the car and he starts giving me the list of all the things he didn't like about what happened. I feel a move against energy towards him.
Mhm.
I feel
Mhm.
resentful. I feel angry, but I feel a move against before I feel anything else, to be completely
Yeah.
honest with you. Before I
Yeah.
fix it, before I even I think there's probably a little bit more self energy. I don't feel that way, but I often feel that, right? Like if he comes home or if he gets in the car and it's just immediate negativity, there's an immediate move against feeling and energy inside of me.
That's right. And I think it's important because the parts of us are reacting to things that are objectively negative. So complaining or hurting, those things are objectively painful. It's just that our burdened parts' natural response is making it worse. But I think that brings up a really important point, which is move toward does not mean anything goes. So move toward, or how IFS says it, all parts welcome, doesn't mean all behavior is welcome. And that's a really critical distinction. Move toward is just a more effective way to help behavior and painful behavior, painful feelings heal. But it doesn't mean that all behavior, all feelings are good or are welcome. And that's important. So if our child gets in the car and is hurting or is complaining, or if our friend is facing a really challenging situation, if the person across from us is suffering, there's something in us that recognizes all is not well, all is not as it should be. And out of burdened energy, we move against to try to make it well, and it makes it less well. When we move toward, it actually helps to get at what will help to make it well. And I think it's important to notice that 3 words is not the whole IFS model. So when we move towards something, we're doing something very specific. We're just doing these 3 steps. We're not unburdening these parts. We're not doing the deep trauma healing work. That really is appropriate to take into a professional situation. But we're managing triggers. We're checking in with parts. We're creating this self energy, this healthy attachment between our core self and whatever part is activated, that really helps whatever the painful feeling or behavior is to settle and to be heard and seen, which is what it really wants anyway, and to understand what the true need is underneath it. And that is the most effective way to help it heal.
I love that, because I think what we think is, and I mean, I have parts that think this way too sometimes, and I know I definitely hear this from my clients, is that if I move towards the part of me that wants to eat the Oreo cookies, or I move towards the part of my son who's complaining, he's going to be 12 tomorrow. And I guess what's happening is there's a lot more opinions happening. And I'm like, wait, what's happening? So he's 12. So there's all these opinions. And so if I move towards those things, then that means they're allowed. Like if I move towards the part of me that wants to, or, and not that they're not allowed, like I can honor, this is what I'm hearing you say. I can honor that part of me that wants to eat the Oreo cookies, or the part of him that has lots of opinions right now. It doesn't mean that I'm going to eat the Oreo cookies, or that I'm just going to let him, be disrespectful. And I can still move towards those parts of him, so he feels heard and seen and connected. And I can do the same thing with my Oreo cookie eating part.
Yeah, that's right. And in fact, when we move against our 12-year-olds, happy birthday, Eris, our 12-year-olds opinionated parts or attitude parts, they're likely to take over more. And when we move against our cookie eating part, it's likely to take over more. So the counterintuitive reality is that actually when we move toward it, we're not only are we not saying it's good or okay, we're just being compassionate, but it's less likely to take over and be present rather than more likely. But I think that becomes even more critical when we think about something perhaps a little more damaging than maybe an adolescent having some opinions. So let's take, for example, my clinical specialization is working with addiction and betrayal trauma. So let's say that we're working with someone or being present with someone whose partner has been abusive or been unfaithful or manipulative or lying. Like there's a really significant breach of boundaries, breach of trust, breach of respect in the coupleship, let's say, in the partnership. So move toward doesn't mean that you move toward someone's parts who are harming you, just wide open and saying, yep, come on, just bring on the betrayal, bring on the abuse, bring on the gaslighting and manipulation. Let's do this thing. When we're in situations like that, there's actually a conjugate to this. We have to move toward before we can wisely turn toward. And here's what I mean by that. We have to first move toward our own parts that are activated in that circumstance. We have to witness them, we have to be with them, we have to help them feel supported until they relax back and we get a critical mass of our own self energy that's leading our internal system before we can wisely know how to turn towards someone whose parts are being abusive, inappropriate, or harmful in some way. And here's why: because our parts they perceive through a lens that is fractured. They're bringing their trauma history with them into the current situation, and they don't perceive accurately. Our self perceives accurately. Our self has one of the 8 C qualities is being clear-minded. So self can accurately perceive, is this a situation where I'm actually being harmed and I need to draw a boundary, or a situation where my exiles feel like I'm being harmed because it reminds them of something that happened in the past. And our parts, when they're burdened, don't have the ability to actually keep us safe. So let's say, for example, someone's partner is unfaithful and their parts take over that are devastated, and protective parts rush in and say, if you ever do this again, if you ever look at porn again, if you ever drink again, I'm leaving you. And that is what our burdened parts think is a boundary. And it's really not. It's a threat. It's an attempt to change the other person's behavior. And when that part calms down, the system realizes that the part that's afraid of losing the connection is not at all going to leave when that does predictably happen again. And so when it happens, then there's no follow through. And what's happened is the betrayed partner has simply taught the other person to ignore their words. They don't mean anything, and they've disempowered themselves. So our parts are trying hard to keep us safe, but they don't have the ability to wisely perceive or to set and follow through with the appropriate boundaries in the situation. The boundary is what is going to keep me safe emotionally, physically, sexually, spiritually, financially. It is not, how do I make the other person's behavior change? It's about, how can I keep myself safe in a way that respects and honors all of my parts, and respects and honors that they're a human being with their own burdened parts, and we are not trying to make their parts do anything different. We are simply honoring that if their parts are not safe, that we will be able to take care of our own system, and only self can do that. So this is a really key piece. Move toward does not mean anything goes. And when we're in a situation that is dangerous or not okay in some way, we have to move toward our own parts before we can wisely turn toward other people's parts.
That is beautiful. And so what's coming up for me as you say that is, otherwise we, like, say for the betrayal trauma that you just mentioned, otherwise we turn towards we turn towards our partner with a part with a protective part that's threatening, because it's so scared, but sort of protecting an exile. And so we end up turning towards with this protective part. And I actually just thought, we actually turn, this is going to confuse me, but I'm going to say it out loud. We actually turn towards with move against energy.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. We think we're turning towards, well, no, you're correct. We're turning toward out of a burdened part rather than self energy. And our burdened parts always have move against energy. So the part that takes us over and says, if you ever do that thing again, I'm leaving you, is trying to move against the part of the other person who hurt them to get it to stop doing that. Yeah. Honorable intent. Of course, we want it to stop doing that. Yes. Totally. And it doesn't have the ability to make that stop. And it doesn't have the ability to keep us safe. Only our self energy does. And that's huge. Boundaries are a really difficult topic. And it's because we misconstrue burdened parts trying to throw out boundaries that are actually threats or manipulation or punishment, versus a true healthy boundary, which comes respectfully, clearly, and courageously from the wise, centered self which is absolutely willing and able to follow through if that boundary is crossed. Because it's not about hurting or minimizing or punishing or changing the other person. It is about honoring and protecting ourselves. And it's a completely different feel. And that also allows us, let's take it to a more macro level. If we are no longer talking about interpersonal relationships, but we're speaking about intercultural, interpolitical, intersocial relationships, that allows us to step into advocacy from a space of self-leadership, for example, where we can speak out against injustice, where we can advocate for truth and for integrity and for equality, without becoming the energy of burdened parts that might be attacking or hateful or judging or demonizing, or the reverse, hiding, denying, minimizing, and being small. This move toward our own parts before we turn toward, let's say, our social justice work or our advocacy or our political engagement makes all the difference. And when we can do that, we can change the world.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I love that, if I turn towards the parts of me before I enter hard conversations or before I enter, arena where there's going to be, political, cultural, social, religious differences. If I move towards my parts and they really hear from me, then they don't bring the burdened energy. They don't bring I've got something to prove. I've got something to say, and I can still say the thing and do the thing, but it's going to feel very different and it's going to be more connecting, which I think is part of the move towards. It's going to be more of a connecting energy between me and my partner, between me and my son, between me and the organization that I'm trying to, support or speak up against or whatever that is.
Yes, because self is always in a space of connection, either to our own parts or to the humanity and the self of all other sentient beings, because self is the very essence of love. And love can be courageous, love can be clear, love can be strong, love can be boundaried. And at its core, love is connecting. Love is able to come face to face with someone with whom we wildly disagree, that we see everything in the polar opposite, disagree respectfully with everything the person says, disagree courageously and strongly, and yet never lose sight of their common shared humanity and never lose sight of any extremes that may be presenting for them are well-intentioned parts holding burdens. And to be able to stay connected while we disagree is really the very heart of social connection, the very heart of democracy. Not to be kind of very grand with this, but I think Dick would agree with me that this is how we maintain a social fabric that does not rip apart at the seams, is instead of demonizing one another and moving against, that we remain in this space of loving, courageous, calm, clear-minded connection of our shared humanity and step into that space with love.
And I think that we need to move towards our parts in order to do that, because otherwise
Yes,
there's no way we can do that. And no way that we would,
that's right.
I would never expect myself to be able to do that. I wouldn't expect you to be
Mm-mm.
able to do that. And I wouldn't expect
No.
anybody else to do that. So we'd have to move towards our parts and do our own work and honor and listen and validate and befriend and notice, need, and know in order to do that, in order to do what you're saying.
Exactly. That's why we must move toward before we can wisely turn toward. Move toward has to come first. It has to start internally. We cannot offer to anyone or anything outside of us what we haven't offered to ourselves. I cannot love you if I cannot love me. It has to start inside of us first. And that's really a beautiful gift because it is an overflow of the loving, secure attachment within us that overflows to allow us to be loving, secure attachment figures for those outside of us, whether we're parenting or in a dating relationship or a political advocate, whatever we are, wherever we are, we get to offer it to ourselves first.
Beautiful, beautiful. Otherwise, it's like, what part is loving them, right? Like, what part
Mm-hmm.
is loving them, and what part is the one that needs something from them? And Jenna, that was beautiful. Is there anything else you'd want to say? I know that went by so fast, but anything else you want to say before I ask you the last question?
I am just appreciating you featuring this new book this year. It's so exciting. We have such a wonderful lineup of authors speaking on all of their different integration topics. And so I'm really appreciating the One Inside podcast for spending time with all of these wonderful authors who've come together to contribute. And I'm just grateful to call you friend.
I am grateful to you, and I'm grateful that you agreed to this. I was telling somebody the other day that I was like, it was towards, I don't even know when we talked about it. Maybe it was in the fall. And I was just like, I don't know if I want to do the podcast anymore. I've been having a lot of doubts about it. And then I don't remember what I was doing, but I had this moment where I was like, oh, that would be fun. I'll just have all the authors from the book. That sounds fun. That feels like move towards. And it was clearly because I was just like, oh, like scheduling people and da 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 da. That feels like move against. I don't want to do that anymore. But just this idea was like, yes, I felt the like. So I appreciate you being willing to do this and do this with me. And I'm sure we're going to meet a whole bunch of times this year. Just you and I, just chatting about the latest happenings with the book. And so I'm excited. I'm excited for lots of reasons just to hang out with you.
Me too. Any excuse I can get is always a good excuse to be with you.
Do you think I should ask my last question about what you would want to do, or what do you think?
How about if we ask you if you weren't doing what you're doing? How about that? What would you do instead?
Sure. That's fun. I like that. Well, if I was not doing all the things that I'm doing, what I would do instead is I would live at the beach, and I would either like sell beach umbrellas and books on the beach. So I imagine some sort of like cabana situation where I could sell you beach umbrellas, but I also could talk books and sell books with you. So that's what I would want to do.
Can I be can I be your first customer?
Yes.
I'm all about the whole cabana and book situation. Let's do this.
I love it. I don't know why we can't do it. I think that we can make this happen. Let's get this book published this year. Let's get this book out there and published to the world. And then let's run off to Hawaii together and make a life out there.
It's a deal. I do want to let listeners know that the pre-order is only available on ebook. And I put a super late deadline on it because they penalize you big time if you miss your deadline. It's going to be out way before the deadline that it shows on Amazon.
Which I think is August. Is that what it says?
Yes.
Right now it says August. Yeah.
Yes, we're hoping it'll be much before August. But we are definitely going to have a print version of the book. We just aren't allowed to offer that in the pre-order. So as soon as the book is uploaded, the print version will be available. But pre-orders are ebook only.
Great. All right. And so you will hear from us, you'll hear from me or Jenna about, timing on all that stuff. So everyone will be very informed of when they can touch it, when they can grab it and touch it. Just super excited.
I love it.
Thanks, Jenna. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Tammy. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. If you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, like, all the things. My book is available at your favorite independent bookstore or all the places books are available. You can also visit my website, tammysallenberger.com, where you can download a free meditation on getting to know your should parts. There's parts of you who remind you of what you should be doing. They sound a bit critical at times. Yes, we all have them. You can follow me at IFS Tammy on Instagram and Twitter and the One Inside Facebook page. I'm so grateful for Jack Reardon, who created the new music. Jack is a graduate of Derek Scott's IFS Stepping Stone program. Thanks, Jack, for getting me. And to you, thanks for listening.